Hello and welcome to Deep Impact, a proud member of the Duff Network where we dive deep into Wildbow's most reflective work, 5 years on. Coming up next is Elliot Diebold.
And that was Ruben Morehouse.
It's me. And before we start, again, a reminder that you have 6 days left, I think, something like that, to get in your entries for the Pact, or also Parahumans, Duff fan art contest. The theme is reflections. More details in the show notes down below. Send us all your great artworks.
Yes, you don't have long left, so get them in quick.
Yeah, so...
But don't pause the podcast. You still got to listen to this, but you got to do both.
Listen to this for inspiration while you draw.
Yeah.
And speaking of inspiration, Andy checks up on Roxanne after the savage beating, the inspiredly savage beating that Eva delivered to her, to bring us into 11.8.
I love how Eva sort of opens all this with well, if I wanted her to be dead, she'd be dead. I know exactly how to kill her, and it's that's somehow more psychotic.
I to be honest, if Eva had killed her, I think Eva would just be like, yeah, we wanted her dead, now she won't be a problem. Eva doesn't seem like the kind of person that has a tight grip on her motivations of her actions.
No, that's true. She could just be bullshitting. She's one of the few characters who's allowed to do that.
Yeah.
But I like the way some bits of exposition and hints are sort of snuck in through the dialogue between Andy and Eva in this section. Eva bemoans sort of the fact that there's more than 3 people in the house, which, lets us know that this wasn't part of the plan.
Yeah, so maybe the Thorburn body meat shields did do something after all. But not really.
It doesn't seem like it. Yeah. A 5-minute delay tops.
A minor inconvenience still counts. Everything counts.
That's pretty much the theme of the second half of the chapter, isn't it? Ty's just I don't know, maybe this will slow him down a bit.
Yeah. So I want to talk about this thingy, I should say, because there's this bit where Andy and Eva talk about this, basically a remembrall that they've got with them, is how I'm picturing it at least. And it's the exact kind of thing that Wildbow puts in these stories just to fuck with us by never explaining what they do, but I'm so curious what it does.
Yeah, this is so mean. What is the thingy? What does it do?
Did it do it really well, or did it not do anything? Who knows?
That's we don't know, Andy and Eva don't know. Just yeah, I love this little bit of mystery.
What if here's my fan theory. It is actually a remembrall, and they're using it to remember Blake since his connections were severed. Maybe it's that.
Yeah, I don't know. My first thought was it was something like a jamming signal, but I don't know if that's just because they also talk about how they've got a phone jammer.
Yeah, I think that's just your brain associating 2 different things.
Well, because they said Eva wouldn't notice it because she wasn't a practitioner, so I was like, okay,
yeah,
so
maybe jams connections or something.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, who knows? Does something with Molly's bell.
Yeah, could do.
Hopefully we'll find out.
Yeah. So yeah, Blake basically checks in on the Thorburns. They're all unconscious, and he's like, all right, well, see ya. He goes up to the Cabal, who are all hiding out in Rose's bedroom, and they basically try to figure out what they're trying to do next.
So I think they're actually in the library.
Sorry, yes, they are in the library. I don't know why I put Rose's room. The library actually becomes quite relevant later, so...
Yeah, okay, good. I thought I might be going crazy, or maybe Rose had moved some books into her bedroom or something.
No, she sleeps in the library now.
You would, right? I could see the logic behind doing that. Yeah.
Especially such a nerd like Rose. So as Blake comes back to the Cabal, there's a whole new set of others that they've gathered. I think they are explicitly meant to look a bit shit to us as the readers as well. There's one of them, the knight, that just looks like a knight who's a little bit shitty, from what I can tell at least.
No, they're definitely much less impressive and exciting than whenever Rose has shown up with a group of pirates and stuff, right?
Yeah, totally.
And I think, obviously that makes sense. These guys are shitter than Rose. It adds up. Obviously, the exception to all this is the paper girl is pretty cool, but that's coming. Yeah,
we'll get back to her, I guess. And again, here's another thing that Wildbow drops very tantalizingly and never fully explains. They talk about how they used, Tiffany did some future scrying to try and figure out if they should get a familiar or a domain or an implement. And every time that they looked at this, it basically seemed to lead to some kind of horrible catastrophic consequences. Which again, like, I'm so curious what that is. They kind of theorized that it was some kind of enchantress trick where, like Sandra, a Duchamps, Corvidae's their connections around, but I actually kind of like the idea of it actually being Corvidae fucking with them. I think that could be a good possibility.
Yeah, maybe Mara was waiting for the Rose to let him go so she could snatch him up. I mean, it's interesting as well because they all talk about how specifically it was bad when they looked at forming these sorts of connections with Rose and with Evan. And they're like, yeah, specifically that was what threw up the concept of lost connections. And I mean, in Evan's case, are we sure that has to do with the future and not the past? Like, that seems like too obvious a connection to make for us, like retrospectively, knowing what we know. I can see why they didn't make that connection. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, and I guess the other option is maybe all their ideas were just fucking terrible. Like, if they're talking about making like Rose and Evan familiars with each other, like, that's a fucking dumb plan. Ty is probably about the only one who should consider like pairing up with Evan.
Maybe there's something where if somebody forms a bond with Evan, like a familiar style bond, it does something to like shut off Blake even more, and that's the lost connection. Because obviously Blake and Evan do still have quite a strong connection.
Yeah. I mean, I've been interested. Like, you know, he's obviously still a Thorburn as well. I'm curious, you know, how connections like that manifested in what did.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't seem like there's a very clean kind of like, you know, it doesn't seem like it was a clean bite through the connections, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Maybe I'm just clinging to the hope that one day Evan will re-become his familiar.
I mean, he kind of already is, let's be honest. Like,
I mean, they're kind of getting there. It's kind of becoming a de facto familiar relationship.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, they need to make it official, I guess. So yeah, the Cabal and Blake kind of chit-chat about how they're going to deal with the multitude of problems that they have now got on their plates. And they get some actions, and they're kind of like, all right, we've got some ideas. Now let's worry about the bigger problem, which is the council that has caused all of this trouble. How can they deal with the council?
Man, this is so crazy to me. Like, as if they don't already have enough to worry about. like one problem at a time, everyone.
Yeah, but the problem with that one problem at a time style thinking is it's very Blake, or it's very Taylor style thinking, I would also say, where it's you're always dealing with the immediate problem, but you're not actually dealing with the structural problem that causes the immediate problems.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's fair, and like, I get it. I'm just so surprised that they weren't there. Like, you know, Blake's such a maniac that he's like, you know, they're trapped in this room with so much bad stuff going on, and Blake's like, but you know who else we've got to go and fight?
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It just probably wouldn't have even occurred to me to think outside the house at that point.
No, and the other thing is, Alexis kind of starts talking about how someone's got to go deal with the council, so Blake, you're probably going to have to leave us. And it's, like, I get that if somebody has to go and fight the council, obviously Blake and Evan are the only two that can really move around freely.
Yeah.
But, fragmenting the group even more is such a bad idea. Like, obviously it was a bad idea when we lost Rose on the team, and now obviously it's continuing to get worse, because realistically Blake is one of their strongest assets. Like, in a fight he seems to be relatively capable, and not to say the others aren't, but you know, it's the difference between summoning an other that's kind of maliciously complying with your orders and summoning another who is on board and ready to fuck shit up to the extent that he fucks himself up to do it. Like, he's willing to go the extra mile, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, the issue for Blake has become his ability to affect change, because he's broken pretty much every reflective surface in the house that was still standing. So, you know, that sort of lessens his potential to have an impact.
Yeah.
But yeah. I don't know. I'm still not over how ambitious this whole idea of going straight for the council is, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree. It's ambitious. And they're talking about it, and I think they kind of realize that it's a bad plan, because the conversation starts to turn to Alexis basically saying her goodbyes because she thinks she's gonna die. So
yeah.
if if part of your plan involves saying your goodbyes because you think you're going to die, it might not be the best plan. I'm just going to put it out there.
Or it might be the best plan and all your options are shit because Rose just fucking left you.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I mean, this bit of the conversation's very, heartbreaking, like heartwarming at the same time, like, just like some of the other ones have been. I mean, it affects Blake so much his tattoos start like moving in real time.
Yeah.
So that's where he's at.
They're proper animated now.
But I really like this bit where Blake gets so frustrated that the responsibility over these guys has moved from him to Rose, and that upsets him because it hits that source point. Like he doesn't have a connection to them anymore, and it sort of just reinforces that in his head. And I really like this as an example of like who Blake is, because for 99% of practitioners, that's a godsend. Like that, he just hit the jackpot. He awoke a bunch of innocents and had all of the potential shitstorm karma. They're part of a cabal now. Like, it's pretty much a guarantee, and that's been pushed onto someone else, and he's upset about it because he just wants to be connected to them. Like, it's it's so nice.
Yeah, it's heartwarming, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Alexis actually spells out that there's a thing called the law of retribution, which I think we sort of had an inkling of, but it's like being codified by Alexis.
Yeah, it plays into some of the hospitality laws that we already kind of knew about, and like, stuff like that.
Yeah, basically, if you're a shithead and to someone, and then they turn around and are a shithead to you, it's going to work out better for them because you started it. Basically, I mean, it's very it fits in with the world of Pact pretty well, like that sort of eye for an eye thinking.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's something we sort of knew was happening, but it's nice to have it codified this way.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So Alexis and Blake start planning for her death. When suddenly one of the others that they sent out, a paper girl, gets bounced back, comes through the door, and just immediately starts fucking shit up. She is very scary, but also very cool, which is right on point for a good, high-quality other. I
mean, this is such a neat power. I really love the little detail of like where she spells out words. Like, it really reinforces the symbolism of like her personality. It's such a great... I mean, it's just one of those little details that makes worlds like Pact feel so much more fleshed out and real, and makes them so much better. And of course, this girl also serves as a pretty obvious benchmark for Blake to think about this whole other versus human conflict he's been going through for 2 arcs now, because she's literally made out of paper, but she's got a little flesh book. So, like, the imagery of her having traded away her humanity for her otherness is right there. Yeah,
not to mention, obviously Blake is tree, she is paper. Like, they're quite similar in a lot of ways.
Yes, they have affinity. AFFINITY.
Do you imagine her? This idea came into my head while I was reading this, and it's so stupid, but like spelling it out like a cheerleader as she's saying these things.
No, I much more got the impression of like a little spelling bee type thing.
Yeah.
Which I think fits in with the creepy little girl.
No, I think,
like, imagery very well.
I agree, but it just got stuck in my head of her kind of dancing out as she yells out the letters, and I couldn't get it out. Anyway, let's move on.
Do you think that's a less scary or more scary?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. Alexis drops a pretty interesting and juicy line here when she is being paper cut to death. She says, "Look after Rose. Don't trust your instincts when it comes to her." And yeah, like, Alexis is putting in a lot of work to get Blake on board with Rose here, right? Saying don't trust your instincts is interesting.
Yeah, and there's a few things Tiff says as well. Like, the Cabal gets about as close to saying anything about, Blake's situation as they can without actually saying anything or even hinting anything. So yeah, I mean, we've known that there's some shoe that's still left to drop with regards to like Blake and Rose's relationship, and I think not only does this reinforce that idea, it ups the stakes on it. Like, the fact that Alexis is so invested in it, whatever it is, really validates everything for Blake. Like, as in, the idea that he shouldn't trust his instincts is a lot more validated coming from her
Yeah. Can you
Um,
imagine if Rose had said it? Like, she
oh yeah,
just would have tuned it out completely.
yeah. Well, of course she'd say that. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. This like feeds into the mystery really well. And kind of puts a whole lot more pressure on it for me. The fact that now Alexis has said whatever is going on with Rose is the good thing.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It does. It definitely adds pressure to it, for sure. Actually, speaking of putting pressure on it, the paper girl says something interesting here. She says, "The blood loss will kill them, not me. Then I'll have their skin, and I'll make a new book with a new cover and fill it with new words." I said interesting there. I guess the right word is terrifying. Another instance of definitely gives me that kind of Keller vibes with flaying skin, stuff like that, which is apparently a very common thing in the Pact universe. Basically, every other does some kind of skin flaying.
I mean, well, it's just so fun.
Yeah, no. And I love the idea that I kind of have this headcanon for how Wildbow came up with this other, where he just thought, what's something that people disproportionately hate? Okay, paper cuts. How can I turn a paper cut into a sentient monster? And this is the result.
Maybe Wildbow got a paper cut like a couple of days before
yeah.
writing this chapter and was just really not feeling paper cuts. But yeah, as we sort of talked about, like Blake tries to talk to Paper Girl,
Yeah.
and I mean it doesn't go well. Like the more she speaks, the more you're like, yeah, this isn't going anywhere, Blake.
There's clearly
she's
no
a lost
way.
cause.
Yeah, there's no way he's going to convince her to not be one of those murdery kind of others.
Yeah. Especially, and I mean, because she mentions one of the first things she says is if like they have called her, and if she kills them, then she's free.
Yeah.
So. Not to like take her side or anything, but like I can see,
fair. It's fair. It's a fair deal.
Yeah. Like I can see why she's invested in killing them.
Yeah, it's interesting to track boogeymen and their relative, I guess, sentience is maybe not the right word. Like their relative lack of bloodlust, and see what the common factors are. Because like of the boogeymen that we know of, there's Blake obviously, but I'm going to kind of put him aside. We've got the Revenant from a few arcs back who didn't seem blood crazed.
Is he a boogeyman though? I just thought he was like a particularly noteworthy Revenant. I thought really the faceless woman was
yes,
the other, or the boogeyman in their partnership.
Sure, but her as well, kind of quite not docile because she was quite aggressive to the other, but like she didn't seem to go so she didn't seem to revolve around violence. She seemed to have a bit of a life, you know?
She seemed to be struggling with it in much the same way Blake is.
Yeah. And it's interesting.
Like she was having to learn to control her rage, or was trying to anyway.
I'm kind of curious to think about what separates a boogeyman like her from a boogeyman like this, who just seems to revel in fucking shit up, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I would assume, and this may not be 100% true for all of them, but like if she's one of the ones who's bound and you're calling up from the abyss, she's probably more like Midge or something, right? Where she didn't escape. Somebody came down and picked her out. So that might be part of it. You know, she's not someone who came to terms with their issues enough to actually make it out. They're someone who doubled down, became crazy, and has been fished out.
Yeah, or maybe even a boogeyman like the Faceless Woman has presumably escaped being bound, or killed the person who bound them, or whatever it is that means that they're now able to be a bit more free roaming, and that just gives them the time to reflect, I guess.
Yeah. Wonder what Green Eyes is doing on that note. Where's she at right now?
Yeah, just swimming around, scaring the ice fishes around Jacob's Bell. I don't know. So the Paper Girl kind of keeps shredding the Cabal, and they basically all start saying their goodbyes to Blake. Tiffany's goodbye is adorable. I love it. She's so cute.
Yeah. I mean, she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry if this goodbye is lame. It's just because I'm lame." And it's just like, "Oh, Tiffany." And then, yeah, I was originally going to say that one was the saddest, but then I remembered the other ones, and I've decided they're all the saddest.
Well, it's interesting. I had the same reaction. I don't know what it is. It's not the saddest, but it felt like it was the most emotionally affecting to me. And I'm kind of curious what that was, because, like, logically, I know that Alexis is someone who is a lot closer to Blake, and her goodbye was also very emotional, but it just didn't seem to hit me in the same way.
Well, hers doesn't really. She doesn't actually have the whole speech thing like Alexis. Like, hers basically, for whatever reason, doesn't fully happen, and it's sort of like, that in a way that makes you think that there's more to it, because it's, there's the mystery. It's sort of pure in your head of how like, sad a goodbye that is. But like, Tiffany's, we actually experienced it, so it feels more raw.
Yeah, plus Ty's is obviously quite short and to the point.
Yeah, his is brief and like touching. The more you think on it, the more you're like, oh, but like,
yeah,
it doesn't hit you at the moment.
Yeah. Blake has an interesting response to them as well. He spots again an opportunity to jump in and ask for more information. Like, oh, you're dying. Why not just tell me some of that data, that sweet data that you've got? But he is aware enough to realize, no, that's probably not super appropriate. Being badgered for information that you can't give up and then dying is probably not a great way to go, I would say.
Yeah, for once, I'm not going to be mad at Blake for not being nosy.
Yeah,
I agree.
Good work, Blake.
Yes, this is reading the room. Although this is him. This is the first bit where he sort of starts to admit to himself that he could be admitting to himself that they might be about to die or something.
Yeah, which is again quite emotionally affecting him. Yeah, because he's not. I mean, it's not just that he reads the room successfully, I guess, to take away some of his credit. It's that he knows that saying, oh, you're gonna die, so tell me this anyway, he has to start there with, oh, you're gonna die, which is the reality he's not really ready to face yet.
Yeah.
So the paper girl advances towards Alexis and going for the kill, basically, and Blake kind of snaps a little bit. He lunges out of the mirror, breaking it, and murders the paper girl with his trusty hyena. And then this is the last mirror left. And so without it, he is basically shunted outside and can't come back in.
I'm glad that he didn't just stab the paper girl, but he was smart enough to stab the book like that. Trope savvy Blake.
Yeah, good on him
again.
Yeah,
because like that was definitely the way to take her out. So I'm assuming she did get dead. And he bought his friends couple of minutes.
God, I hope so. Imagine if he gets back and the paper girl's just chilling there with the shredded bodies and he's like, oh, fuck. I forgot to double tap, whatever. Yeah. Can we talk about... So, this is a little bit ambiguous, but it seems that, or Blake kind of lets himself believe that Alexis was pretending to be worse off than she is in order to get Blake to freak out, I guess. Freak out and do some action. Which is intense. I mean, it kind of worked, but if that was actually Alexis's plan, it's a pretty cold plan.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit manipulative.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I agree. It felt ambiguous, and I wasn't sure where we're meant to land on it, but it does feel like, yeah, I don't know quite what to make of all of it. Hopefully we get to see her again and we can find out some more details. Because, yeah, I mean, I'm so interested. I hope she's not dead, because I feel like there's so much more to do with Blake and Alexis right now. With this whole imbalance of how much, emotion there is in their relationship.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we'll see. We don't see her again this chapter, at least. So Blake is now outside the house and he whistles to summon his faithful companion, Evan. And together they head off to Sandra's house, which seems to be the only house that is like even slightly vulnerable to them.
Yeah, I mean, basically the whole council's laying low because they figured Rose might send something unstable out to take them out. And
yep, and here he is. So he basically looks at the house and is like, we can't do anything here. But there's this interesting moment before he gets to the house where he basically stops and starts being overcome by emotions, kind of processing that his friends are all possibly dead right now. and he kind of goes into this, oh, I hate Rose, I hate myself spiral, but he gets pulled out of it by remembering Alexis telling him not to trust his instincts, and that kind of pulls him back towards being calm. And we kind of point out a lot of instances of Blake slipping down towards being a boogeyman more and more, but this is actually him slipping away from that. Like, he actively takes a step away from being a boogeyman to be more of a human again. Ironically, by turning off his emotions a little bit, so maybe not. But either way, it's a good effort, Blake. Good effort.
I mean, it's a good EQ move. But yeah, I mean, I think the interesting part for me is we just sort of talked about how there's a chance, and like seemingly a good one, that Alexis was maybe manipulating him a bit right there. And it's just interesting how much trust he still has for Alexis right now, considering like he knows that on her end, like she's not feeling it. Like,
yeah,
his trust that she's a good person goes so far beyond their relationship, and he just assumes that she's going to be good to him regardless of who he is.
Yeah.
Which, you know, if she is, like, if she was just manipulating him because she knew that he's in love with her and would do anything for her, I'm going to be pretty mad. I guess we'll see. Like,
yeah. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, she's been hanging out with Rose, who was very didn't see others as sentient, even from the start of the story, I guess. So who knows?
Manipulating him to do something like that would be a classic Rose move, and so I guess we might see if Rose has been rubbing off on Alexis at all, and how Blake will just turn that into Rose's fault, even if it is Alexis's.
Yeah. I'm sure if it does go down, Blake is solely going to blame Rose for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Blake obviously can't get the council because he didn't really make a plan here. He just did his usual thing and ran off to fight some Behaims. And so that plan gets quickly abandoned, and it's on to the next, in air quotes, plan, which is to go for the feat. They refer to it as.
Yeah, the junior council. I'm so excited to see them and Blake officially meet.
Yeah, I love the way that this kind of cutting off the feet of the snake unravels. It's just such an adorable conversation. And Evan calling it Operation Snake's Foot is so funny to me.
Yeah, Evan's always so fucking delightful. I'm so glad he exists.
Yeah. Blake basically approaches Briar Girl and uses her as an entry point to convene the junior council with the mindset of trying to change the status quo.
I like how Briar Girl assumes he's there for a different reason at first, and I think she assumes that he's something else. She implies that others of his kind have come to make her bend to the rules, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's what does it mean? It's another. Yeah, it's the third in this chapter of a little drop of bait that feels like it's never going to get resolved.
Like, I mean, maybe she did know he's a boogeyman, and I don't know. I'm very interested. I mean, it took my mind back to, you know, it was Arc 3 when I remember we had the tidbit dropped that the Briar Girl had a teacher.
Yeah.
And we never found out who that was.
Yeah.
So, you know, I guess I'm hoping for a Briar Girl interlude or plotline at some point.
Yeah. And yeah, so changing the status quo. It's what we've been basically building up to the entire story, right?
Yep.
And maybe it's finally going to happen. Although, I don't know. It's Blake, and I think he will have a tough time with the junior council, especially considering that he just fought Alistair like a few hours ago, not even. And Alistair seems to be one of the main leaders of this junior council. So it just like I'm all for it, but it's low odds, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think what this is really going to represent is Blake heading in that direction. You know, it's going to be him and a group of other people actually talking about breaking the wheel. And I mean, you know, I guess we've had lots of people mention it throughout interludes and stuff, but this is going to be Blake taking a stand in that direction. Yeah, and that's going to be a cool new thing that I'm excited for.
Yeah, and I guess we'll have to see how that resolves next time on Deep Impact.
Ba-boom.
But before then, No, undo it. Before then, I wanted to touch on our delightful monster here, Paper Girl, because this is interesting to me. Paper-based ghosts is something that feels like it's more of a thing than I actually think that it is. Like I'm struggling to think of any other examples of a paper-based ghost that I can think of. I can't think of any.
I actually, before I got to the point where I saw you'd already started a monster corner on this, I'd spent about half an hour Googling trying to find a concrete real world inspiration for this girl. So I had the same thought as you. I sort of read her and was like, oh, I wonder if there's like real history behind her. I couldn't find anything too direct myself.
I didn't find much. I kind of started by thinking about what does this monster feel like, right? And the closest thing I could associate it with was, a little girl ghost is a very kind of Japanese horror movie thing, like.
Sure.
So, and then the other thing is, I'm pretty sure that I have seen some other examples of not human but like origami based monsters. And so these kind of thoughts combined in my head to mean there's probably some Japanese folklore that ties together with something like this. And so that's the rabbit hole that I dove down here. And so diving into it, I did find a fair few paper-based Japanese monsters, but none of them are quite the right fit here. I actually suspect, and maybe this is a topic for a future Monster Corner, I suspect that there is a whole other set of lore to do with flesh-bound books that might lead to some interesting topics.
I dove down that avenue myself in my Googling and didn't find much, but I may have missed something.
Yeah, we'll see. So I kind of dove into Japanese monsters, which honestly, of all the monster folklore, I think Japan has some of the best. It's great.
Yeah.
And obviously Japan used paper for a lot of things in a more modern sense. Things like umbrellas, lanterns, doors, which led to it being a bit more culturally important to them and therefore higher likelihood of breaking into some interesting mythology. I eventually came across and kind of dove down deeper onto a type of Japanese spirit called yokai, which may sound familiar for the elite video gamers among us because there's a Japanese kind of Pokemon-esque series called Yokai Watch, which is about collecting all these different yokai. Yokai are basically Japanese spirits that, at least in modern times, are often depicted as basically being ghost infestations or ghost manifestations of everyday household items.
So like in Pact, it would be the equivalent of like, remember we had that frog spirit that made the puddle? Like if you had something similar take over your toaster or something.
Yeah, exactly right. A toaster spirit, a malicious toaster spirit.
Yeah, okay.
The kind of origin of these yokai is in some Japanese creation myths. Basically, the land is infused with kind of latent magical energy, which kind of gave me very Pacty spirit kind of vibes.
Yeah.
And then big events or strong human emotions kind of cause this to spontaneously combust into a monster, which, you know, the word yokai used to basically just mean kind of spirit-esque monsters that could shapeshift, but they weren't super heavily tied to household objects until they kind of evolved over time. And there was this book called, and I love this title, The Illustrated Night Parade of 100 Demons, which was basically a guy who just took a few like yokai style monsters and then made up a bunch and published a kind of compendium of drawings of them. And then from then on, like that, they all just entered the mythology, which is so baller. Just like writing a book of fake mythology that then enters the real world. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't the first time. Like, remember we had, I think it was when we were talking about Solomon.
Yes.
I mean, there was just like the list of old demons.
Yes,
it's like these
I love it. It's
ancient
so good.
SCP Foundation books, basically.
Yeah. And I guess it's the old time version of creepypasta, really, is what it is.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Slenderman and shit, that has just started because somebody wrote a weird horror story about it on the internet, and then it kind of entered the public consciousness. Anyway, so some of these paper-based yokai that I found were paper umbrellas, Kasa Obake, a paper umbrella monster, paper lanterns, Chochi no Bake, paper sliding door monsters, Moku Mokuren, and this one's so good. So the paper sliding door monsters. So you know, you think of like those Japanese style doors, and they've got grids. These monsters, basically, each of those grids is an eye, and they're found traditionally in rundown places where these doors have started falling apart. And instead of the grids of paper, they just have eyes in the parts where the paper doesn't exist, which is so weird. I love it. Actually, one of the stories is, and this is the full quote that I pulled out here. It was just so bizarre that I had to pull it out. A stingy travelling merchant once tried to save money by sleeping in an abandoned house rather than sleeping in an inn. Waking in the middle of the night, he was confronted by a, brackets, almost, entire shoji screen staring down at him. Instead of becoming scared, he removed the eyeballs from the screen and sold them to a local eye surgeon. And that's the story behind this monster.
That's a twist I did not see coming.
Yeah, so this is a very shit-tier monster, the Moku Mokuren. Anyway, but there is one that was more close to our paper girl, which was a yokai called Kyorinrin, which is basically like a sentient set of scrolls or papers or books. And it honestly, it's made out of paper, and it's a thing that moves around, but it's not quite humanoid. It's more like a snake of papers. But it was the closest I could come to for some inspiration for this paper girl. So I don't know. I kind of dove down the yokai rabbit hole a bit here, but I'm interested to hear if anyone has any other mythology ideas of what could have fed into our lovely paper girl here, because I am quite curious to find out more about this kind of monster.
Yeah, exactly. Me too.
Yeah. So hopefully it's fun learning about paper monsters, and if anyone has any ideas for what other paper monsters are out there, the best place to leave those is in our discussion thread, which is linked down in the show notes down below.
Yes, and of course we're always available on Twitter as well, @MediaMD Podcast. Twitter's usually up 24/7, so you can hit us up anytime. We may not get back to you immediately, but Twitter will be there.
Yeah. It's always there for you when you need a shoulder to cry on, is at the Media MD Podcast Twitter. Yeah.
Yes.
If you want more of the great shows that are on the Duff Media Network, you can head to duffmedia.com to find all of the great shows. Apart from this one, there are lots. For example, the Book Club. There's a new episode of the Duff Book Club, which has come out. Is that today? Yeah. That's today?
Yeah, so it's later today. This is...
we beat them.
This is coming out Friday morning America time, and the book club is tonight America time. So for Aussies, it'll be, the middle of the day tomorrow on Saturday. Mm-hmm. But we're doing The Black Company as the book. So that'll be Matt and I talking about that. And I'm very excited.
Awesome. And if you love our love of stories, the best way to support the network is by going to patreon.com/duffmedia, where you can become a patron and directly help us keep doing some of this cool stuff.
And that's how you get to vote in the Fanart contest as well, which, is very important because we need to beat those Parahumans fans.
Teach those snobby Ward and Worm fans a lesson about which story's the better one. It's Pact.
Yeah. Also, Wildbow has a patron. He wrote like Worm, Ward, and Pact, so he's kind of above all this conflict, and you should give him money whichever side you're on.
Yeah. But when you do donate to him, make sure you say, "This is from the Pact crew," just so he knows. You don't have to do that. Probably don't, I would say, but you could if you want to. Who knows? Anyway, that's our episode for now. We'll be back to talk about Malfeasance 11.8, the Junior Council meeting on Monday the 30th of September. So we'll see you then.
See ya.